So, to the Tory leadership. Well, I'm not a Tory Member of Parliament anymore, as you all know, so until now I've had no role in what is going on, and I thought it was important to recognise that I was no longer an MP and therefore didn't have a role, and it was for MPs to decide who the last two were, which is why, up until today, I haven't decided who to support. But in the end, I have a vote as a member of the Conservative Party, and it's a very important decision for the Tory party, the Tory family, to make. Who do we want to lead us to the next general election? Who do we think can take on the Reverend Starmer, who will be able to converse with Nigel Farage and see where that may go, one way or another, who can steal Nigel's clothes if necessary, which may be the best way of going about it. Well, I've come to the conclusion that that person is Robert Jenrick. I think that he will be able to do it. I'm going to decide to support him because I think he understands the depth of the challenge the country faces and has the gumption to do something about it. Now, I think Kemi Badenoch has many virtues. She is highly capable. Her campaign against woke has been extraordinarily impressive. And I think the Conservatives need to come together after the result and support whoever wins. But it just seems to me that Robert has that edge and the ability to lead and to get Conservative policies to the forefront of the political agenda. I think we lost the last election because we hadn't done Conservative things. As my correspondent Billy says, we put corporation tax up to 25%. We must change from that. And I think Robert will be able to do that, which is why I'm supporting him. But I'm glad to say I've got my panel with me. GB News' senior political commentator, who is here as always, and of course, a very distinguished peer of the realm. So, Paul, let me come to you first, because you've been intimately involved in Conservative machinations for many years. You were a leading light in David Davis's campaign, if I remember rightly, in the 2005 leadership election. How do you think it's now working out?
You've got a good memory, but not perhaps as careful as mine. I was working out today. I've lived through 12 Conservative leadership elections and participated in 6. And perhaps for that reason, I'm feeling a bit jaded. I don't think it's been a bad leadership election to date, but unlike you, I can't quite make up my mind who to vote for. I think both these candidates, Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch, as she likes to, does not like to be called Badenoch or Bad Enoch. I should let you know it's Badenoch is the way she likes her name to be pronounced. They've both got their strengths. But for me, I think I'm waiting to hear a message about economic credibility, immigration control, of which we've heard quite a lot, and value for money in the NHS. I've not yet heard a lot about the first and the third, which are part of the triangle that will help the Conservatives perhaps get re-elected.
I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I think economic credibility is fundamental, and that the opportunity for the Conservatives, to what you were saying in the previous section, is to work out how we do Conservative things without alienating the voters who are dependent on state support.
Have you heard much yet from either of the candidates on the economy? I'm not conscious I have, particularly from Kemi Badenoch.
I think both of them have said a bit on it, but I think it's been drowned out by the other areas of discussion so far. But I think you're right, we need to hear more of it in the few remaining weeks of this campaign. Nigel, who do you think of these two the Labour Party would be most frightened of?
Well, I think the Labour Party are cock-a-hoop by the way the whole thing has gone. That if they'd had Tom Tugendhat or even James Cleverly, I think that would have been a major problem for Keir Starmer because they would have moved onto his ground. So the issue would then become one of competence rather than ideology. It seems extraordinary to me that your party has decided to shift to the right when a general election result has brought in overwhelmingly a party towards the left of centre. So I can imagine that what will happen next is that the Conservatives will go through a couple more machinations before we get to the next election, which means at least one new leader, maybe two, until you finally get to the position where you have a David Cameron-type figure who knows how to take on Labour. At the moment, you don't.
Well, there is a story which may be apocryphal, that when Mrs Thatcher was elected in 1975, Labour MPs danced the conga through the lobbies and said, "We can't lose now." They lost the next 3 elections. So never be too sure about what you're up against. However, I do think this isn't 1975. The Conservatives are in a worse position. And I feel I know much less about what either of the candidates would do. That's what's bothering me, not this rather conventional left-wing argument that they're too right-wing.
And inevitably, the left in politics will always like the most left-wing of the Conservative candidates.
So, you get it the other way round. The right always want the more right-wing of the 2 Labour candidates. But it doesn't necessarily mean either are right.
And in terms of policy development, do you think it's been right to have this long leadership campaign? It has at least give a chance to expose the successes and the feet of clay of the candidates along the way.
Yes, I think it's been fine. And if you'd rushed into it, I don't think you'd have had the time to make the right choice. Longer probably wouldn't have been right. Of course, we could have also let Rishi Sunak carry on. I put this possibility to someone in his office 2 days ago and got a gasp of horror in response.
But he's actually been a pretty good leader of the opposition.
He's been pretty good. He looks pretty chirpy as leader of the opposition. Although, of course, the real leader of the opposition at the moment is the former Tory Special Advisor Henry Newman, who's been harrying Keir Starmer about his freebies and goodies from here to the end of Cornwall.
Well, that's an issue for the Conservatives, isn't it? That there are lots of leaders of the opposition at the moment, one of whom must be Nigel Farage.
Yes.
And that the challenge for the next Tory leader is how do you deal with Nigel? Do you love bomb him, the David Cameron approach to the Lib Dems, or do you steal his clothes?
Well, I think the danger, again, is this shift to the right, that Reform is also cock-a-hoop about this. Why vote for Reform Light, which is what the Tory party is likely to become, when you can vote for the real thing? So you've managed to actually end this leadership contest as far as the MPs are concerned, pleasing both the Labour Party and the Reform Party.
I'm trying to remember who the French general was who said, "My left is in chaos, my right's in disarray. I must advance." And I think that's what the Conservatives have got to try to do. I wouldn't worry too much about Farage on his own. You've got to think there's a problem with Reform, there's a problem with the Lib Dems and a problem with Labour. So what do you do? And what Thatcher did, Cameron did less successfully, but he did it well enough to get into office after 2010, was to try to go back to core Conservative ideas and then advance them.
That's the opportunity that you need, the restructuring of central office, and you need the development of the ideas, which are the 2 things a leader of the opposition can do. Otherwise, the leader of the opposition has remarkably little power.
Well, you do, and the ideas have really got very confused because you had a sort of one-nation government under Cameron, then Theresa May, who believed in the good that government could do, then Boris, who wanted to have his cake and eat it, then Liz Truss, who definitely did not believe in the good that government can do, and then Rishi Sunak at the tail end. And I think the Conservatives have lost their clarity of message and they need to get back to their basic ideas and principles.
And that actually, when we've done this in the past, 1945 to 1951, 1975 to 1979, it's been when we have had to re-examine what we stand for. So it is, in fact, quite a big opportunity.
It is, though. The stakes have never been higher with these masses of Lib Dems MPs and with Nigel Farage.
Yes, though importantly, the Lib Dem MPs didn't get in because they got masses of new Lib Dem votes.
No,
they got in because a lot of Tories stayed at home or voted for Nigel.
And I've heard nothing...
Not you, rather Nigel.
I've heard nothing from either of the 2 candidates about how they'll deal with the Lib Dem threat, where you've got a Tory seat which is Lib Dem facing. And I think that the Lib Dems pulled off an extraordinary coup at this election. They ended up with a result which would have been the same as they'd got if we'd had proportional representation, and did it on first past the post. Now, I think that your party and the Labour Party need to find out what that trick was and how they did it.
That, I think, is the best psephological point that we have had made on the State of the Nation since the programme began. So thank you very much to my panel for that. I told you they were my most intellectual panel, and Nigel has proved the point. Coming up...